Hey guys, this is Khavrion, and I'm here with another battle report. Actually, it's kind of only like 2/3 of a battle report. It is for round 2 of IGL Season 3, and I didn't take a lot of screenshots for that game, and I didn't really take a lot of notes about what happened. So I am only going to do a short overview of the game. The mission for round 2 of Season 3 IGL is Countermeasures. In Countermeasures, there's basically a series of classifieds that you draw and then have to do. Every time you do a classified, you get points for yourself, and you eliminate the classified so the other person can't do it. My understanding of the history is that Countermeasures is actually a fan-made mission. Yeah, it says right here it's by Mickey Ward Leviathan from the White Noise Design a Mission contest. And if you like classifieds, then I think this is a dynamic and interesting way to play with the classifieds. That said, while I really do like the idea of classifieds, I don't like their implementation. None of my complaints are particularly original thoughts. Like many others, I feel that the classifieds vary wildly in difficulty, so that some of them are extremely easy to do and others are extremely difficult to do. Not only that, it varies faction to faction, so some factions have a natural advantage doing classified relative to others. Moreover, because a player doing a classified prevents the other player from accomplishing that same classified, it gives a pretty big advantage to whichever player is lucky enough to see the easy classifieds during their turn. For that reason, I think there's a lot of luck that is completely out of control of either player going into any game of Countermeasures. That said, infiNity is a game, and when I signed up for the league, I knew this mission was going to be there, and my intent was just to relax and have fun and play a game of infiNity and not stress too much about whether the, classified deck forced me to win or lose. So that was the plan. Now, when I sat down to play against my opponent and saw the map for the first time, I also discovered that I would be trying to be zen about the map. This map is something that I will, let's be charitable and call it experimental. It has an upper floor up here, and it has an entire lower floor underneath. There are some access points between them, like this grating has a ladder that goes down, but it doesn't change the fact that there is just this wildly complex map that is basically 2 topographies that you have to keep track of. Simply seeing line of fire and placing models on the lower level was difficult, and envisioning how to traverse this map was complicated and annoying. So the goal for this game is going to be to relax and have fun with the zany map just in the same way we're going to try to relax and have fun with the zany mission. Having done all that, let's talk about my list. I was sorely tempted to run the big boy list by Steel Phalanx. I love that list, it's a lot of fun to play, and if you've been following the channel, you know that I have a lot of success with it. But it does not have great classified coverage, and I felt like I was setting myself up for frustration if I didn't try to have some decent classified coverage. This list is based on the Atalanta partner list that I take to accompany Steel Phalanx Big Boys. So if I'm going to a tournament, I will take the Big Boy list, and my second list will be something like this. It has a lot of the same elements as the Big Boy list, but I have to say it's not as good, and more importantly, it's not as fun. Even so, I will take you through it. First off, you have the Big Four: Phoenix, Machaon, Akmon, and Ajax. That Anomatargos does a lot of work in the Big Boy list, and it's going to do a lot of work in this list too. These guys can just pain train their way across the board. They can gunfight anything, they can throw smoke, they can have Ajax, they can do all the good stuff. The only difference is because Machaon is your lieutenant, you have to be careful to make sure that he stays safe or else you're going to end up in lost lieutenant. Moreover, because you're missing Hector, you're missing out on those 2 orders from his Strategos. What that means is that you have to be a little bit more careful with just how big of a Rambo run you do. You can still snap the back of your opponent's list with a massive attack on the first turn, but you just have to be more careful about ending up in a defensive position because you won't have the orders to, form up afterwards if you try to do that. In terms of highly classified, you've got characters for, they're all veterans. You've got Akmon, who's an engineer. You've got Machaon, who's a lieutenant. The guys who are NWI are kind of nice because you can doctor them without, having to have them be unconscious. And because this is a Myrmidon team, I considered having a Myrmidon hacker in there for those classifieds that require a hacker. But the Myrmidon hacker costs like 30 points, and the only guy that I really think makes sense dropping is Akmon, who's an engineer, and he's got classifieds of his own to do. So I decided not to take the Myrmidon hacker, which means I'm basically not going to have a hacker in this list. Next, Lamed, Netrod, Warcore. Nothing special, cheerleaders, and flash pulses. After that is the Daleth. When I originally made this variation on the list, the Daleth was actually intended to be for acquisition. In acquisition, you can end up with circumstances where your opponent will put a hidden deployment trooper, and having the sensor to go sweep it out can be useful. However, I decided to leave it in there, and it'll actually be pretty good for this mission. It's fast, it's a forward observer, and it has sensor, which means it can do a lot of the countermeasures classifieds that require a visor. Plus, if it goes unconscious, then repairing it with Akmon is another way to accomplish a classified. After that, we have Group 2. The key element of Group 2 is Atalanta. Frankly, Coming up with a way to include Atalanta is the reason that I take this list in general. I don't love her. She is unreliable. Half the game, she's going to win every face-to-face and knock everything down in the arrow. The other half, she's going to die like a chump on turn 1 to the first order or something like that. So if big boys are robust and reliable, Atalanta is strongly variant. However, I think the core of this list is robust enough that I really can't afford to have Atalanta sitting out there. If she gets lucky and wins a bunch of face-to-face rolls, that's great. If she gets unlucky and goes unconscious, I can try to bring her back. And if that fails, then she's not adopting a bunch of orders or eating up precious SWC, and so I can afford to just lose her and get unlucky there. Finally, we have an Enomatarchos of the Thoracitae. I actually really like the Thoracitae. They also seem to exemplify a lot of the things of Steel Phalanx that I like. At armor 3 and about, 12 points for the base guy, they're really tough for how expensive they are. Not only that, they can be pretty darn dangerous. This Thoracitae light rocket launcher in particular. That dude is going to be armor 3, burst 2 on arrow with BS 12, shooting at Spitfire ranges. If you're careful with the kind of things he can see, he can be dropping 2 fire templates onto your opponent with a, burst 2 is not the worst chance of actually winning a face-to-face. Moreover, he's fairly unlikely to just straight die against a lot of the gunfighters he tends to be up against. What that means is that you can kind of risk him and force your opponent to cut through him, and they have to take him seriously because if they don't, they get, hit by the fire and die, and the template can also be a real pain. Normally, in fact, I have 2 light rocket launcher Thoracitaes in this link, but because this is the list for countermeasures, I decided to swap out the second light rocket launcher Thoracitae for a forward observer Thoracitae. And if you're doing the math, the final point was spent upgrading a 16-point Myrmidon into the Daleth that you see in Group 1. So this forward observer will just give me another angle at accomplishing classifieds in case the Daleth goes down. Other than that, you have the Thoracitae Paramedic for bringing the team up, and you have Alki, who can use her NCO order and her BS-13 Spitfire, which will have Burst 5 to shoot things if you feel like it. It's a nice, robust team. It's good at just moving out into the midfield and sitting there and being annoying. It can gunfight well enough, and it is dangerous in arrow. So that is the list that I have chosen to run. My opponent was playing Starmada. I don't recall exactly what list they had, but the crux of it was that it was a Beta Trooper core with Hector and Parvati. That is a huge amount of points bundled into one core with, those mimetic Beta Trooper guys. I don't know if it's the best way to play Starmada. I don't know if it's the best for this particular mission, but I absolutely can see the appeal of having these big, chunky, heavy infantry guys hanging out with Hector and his lots of orders and hanging out with Parvati and her awesome ability to heal things. Aside from the core, I think my opponent had an Epsilon with an HMG, 2 Varangians, and a Nyoka heavy rocket launcher. Oh, and a Flashpulse bot, which does in fact mean that neither of us are going to have hackers, I guess. All that discussed, I will give a brief overview of the game. I did not take that many pictures, and I don't intend to have this be a long battle report. Essentially, I deployed in a fairly nice castle position. I have my big boy Enomatarchos over here with its ability to push up that way, and I have my Thoracitae over here with the ability to push over that way, and I believe I withheld my Daleth. And the reason I withheld my Daleth is because when the classifieds were drawn, there were 3 of them. And one of them I could do by censoring his HVT, one of them I could do by planting a D-charge on a Serene piece, and one of them had to do with being unconscious next to one of his enemy troopers. All 3 of these are fairly doable by me, and the Daleth in particular, by reserving him, I could guarantee that he couldn't, counter-deploy his list in order to stop my censor from being able to get his HVTs. Meanwhile, he put his castle core in this position. This is the Nyoka, and the Epsilon is over here. My big boy Enomatarchos is right there in case you kind of want to see I would be pressing them that way. He did put his defensive turret downstairs and an HVT downstairs, and I decided that those were the ones that I was going to go for with my Daleth. I think there might have been a Varangian downstairs as well, but other than that, we both mutually were talking about during this game, we were talking about how confusing it was to have the second level, and we kind of both decided that ignoring the second level for the most part was going to be the strategy we pursued. I don't love having to take a map and say, I'm going to ignore half of what's going on in this map because it's confusing, but that is what that is. And so my turn. What happened? Well, the first thing I did was take the Daleth, who was like downstairs over here, and I ran up somewhere over here, I don't know, and tried to censor his HVT, which succeeded. I had actually moved the Daleth into Group 2 because having it be in Group 2 meant that I would be able to spend orders on it without detracting from the core, or the Enomatarchos. And after I censored his HVT, the Daleth ran upstairs. It has climbing plus, but I think I just used a ladder. There was a flashball spot sitting right there, and I had 2 or 3 orders to try to knock the flashball spot unconscious and then get into base to base with it. And the dice just weren't with me. I'm only a combi rifle, so the odds aren't great. And I think I either got stunned or failed to take out the flashball spot and ended with my Daleth in silhouette contact with the Lamed, but the Lamed was still conscious. So that was a little bit of a whoopsie, but whatever. An even bigger whoopsie happened when I was piloting this team. I basically ran all the way out here. I was throwing eclipse smoke and that sort of thing. At this point, I intended to try to knock the Epsilon unconscious and end next to his body for the points, but I got distracted by somewhere along the line. I think I was taking pot shots at the team, and I killed this Nyoka, so I was doing some damage, but I ran out of orders, and I didn't actually plan to decharge with Akmon. So that classified would have been trivial for me to do. I could have just put it on this train. There was nothing that could stop me, but I forgot, and that was a whoopsie. So I could have accomplished 3 classifieds fairly easily. I actually only accomplished 1 classified. I ended up exploding the Epsilon by accident, but things are still going to be okay for me. I have my link over here, and it is watching Hector and everybody else, and my opponent doesn't have any smoke over there. So I don't exactly remember what happens in the big sense, but my opponent essentially takes out my Daleth and then puts a Varangian into silhouette contact with it, and so in that regard, he will be getting his 1 classified there. And then he spends basically all of his remaining orders taking Hector and shooting at Ajax. Now, core-linked Hector is pretty dangerous, but if memory serves, a lot of the time he was not at good range, and Ajax has Mimetism, and Ajax has Armor 5 and BTS 6, and Ajax is dodging on 16s. So this is very easily the kind of thing that can just absolutely take forever, and I didn't need to stall for all that long. My opponent has already lost 2 orders due to casualties, and he spent, 2 or 3 orders trying to get into silhouette contact with my unconscious Daleth. So he only needs to, lose 3 or 4 orders trying to gunfight Ajax before he's not going to be able to do much else with the end of his turn. And that's basically what happens. Ajax dies, but, my turn is largely successful. He does decide to discard the classified associated with the engineering decharge because that'll be trivial for me to do on my turn, and it'll be impossible for him to do with Parvati lockdown. So in the end, he accomplishes only 1 classified. That brings us to my turn 2. I'm a little bit kicking myself for not accomplishing 3 classifieds on turn 1 and instead only getting 1, but it is what it is. Fortunately, I get lucky, and the next classified that's drawn is, I think, something I can do. I think it's either a Doctor 1 or a Forward Observer 1. It's something that I can do. And so what I end up doing is I end up having this Inomatarkos run out over here and doing something with classifieds over here, and then I have my now reduced Inomatarkos without Ajax over here, and I throw some smoke to block off Hector, and I basically run all the way over here, and I kill some stuff, and I kill a Varangian downstairs and some guys upstairs as well. So I've done yet more damage to him, and I think I accomplished 1 or 2 classifieds. I don't remember exactly what they are. And I do want to stress, accomplishing those classifieds is pretty darn lucky for me because it means that I actually drew classifieds that I could do. I don't have full hacker coverage, and some classifieds are just difficult to do in general, and I was able to do them because of the fact that I drew classifieds that I was able to do. So at the end of my turn, I've pulled yet further orders off of my opponent, and I have accomplished 1 or 2 classifieds more or something like that, and things are looking pretty good. The only other thing I want to bring up is I have managed to put Phoenix on top of this train, watching his entire core. So my opponent's core is pinned due to Phoenix. He doesn't have any smoke because I've killed the Varangians, and he doesn't have that many orders. And I don't exactly remember what he does, but it essentially involves taking Hector alone out of the link and trying to just run into this train or something like that. I do throw smoke with Phoenix in order to stop him from being able to shoot me, and the smoke goes down so he's able to walk past Phoenix, but it still costs him a whole bunch of orders in order to make this happen. I don't remember exactly the details. But what does happen is that Hector, I think, kills Alki or a couple of members of the Inomatarkos of the Thrakite, but does not hurt my main set of guys, and ends up stuck inside this train somewhere. So at the end of my opponent's turn, not much has changed in terms of my Group 1's positioning. I don't remember if he got a classified, and I don't remember all that stuff, but Hector is very exposed. Given that Hector is exposed, I've got to go through him, and I decide the best tool to go through him is to have Akmon with his breaker pistols get really close to Hector and shoot him burst forward with the breaker pistols. I get extremely lucky, and I kill Hector in a single order with Akmon and his breaker pistols. Now, contributing to that luck, Breaker does cut Hector's BTS in half. I was also able to flank Hector for some reason. I don't exactly remember why. And if I had had to spend 2 orders killing Hector with Akmon, things would have been fine. But the fact is, it was lucky to kill Hector in a single order. things would have been pretty different if I'd had to smoke Hector off and he would have been alive. After that, I don't remember the details. I think I accomplished a classified with my remaining Thrakite who were able to resurrect someone. And I definitely take my remaining Anomatarkos and walk it into the middle of his core and just start killing people left and right in melee. And the game is pretty firmly decided after that. I believe I accomplished a whole bunch of classifieds, largely because we drew classifieds that I could do, like I think we drew Predator and, Forward Observe the HVT. But at the same time, a large part of this was handled by the fact that my opponent did not have the orders or the ability to get at me on his turn because of what I had killed and because of the list that he had brought. And of course, because he spent so much time trying to take care of Ajax. So yeah, that was the mission. A success for the Steel Phalanx. And I think more importantly, my opponent and I seemed to be having a good enough time as we were doing this mission. The fact that I got unlucky on my turn 1 and that I just completely forgot to do the sabotage objective on my turn 1, this helped to create a more beer and pretzels vibe for the game. It meant that we both weren't playing perfectly and we were making mistakes and we were enjoying the game that was unfolding as a result of those mistakes. That meant that the variance from the classified deck was sort of offset by the fact that we were also having some variance introduced by suboptimal play. That kind of thing isn't great if you're after a super competitive, super high quality battle report, but it helped me a lot enjoy the game with a zany mission on a zany map. In a lot of ways, that was my goal. I accomplished that goal, and I'm happy to have accomplished that goal. I'm not sure that I would sign up for a future season of IGL if this is the kind of mission and map that they're going to produce. But if I had to go back and I could redo this whole experience that I have, I think I would choose to redo this experience. So yeah, anyway, that's the mission. That's the battle report. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you around.